Hello, welcome to the Svelte Witch project. So this is the Svelte Society November Meetup in second home in Spitalfields, or Shoreditch, I'm going to say it. We have two talks tonight, which I don't know the next title of.
We've got Ricardo on Sharable State, and then we have Fergus, who's going to talk about transitioning from React to Svelte.
And now back to the sickening rotating room.
Right,
okay, with no further ado, we'll kick off. Ricardo?
Hi everyone. I think you need to share my screen because it's still outside of the show, but I'm Paolo Ricciuti, and I will talk you about Sharable State. I think my screen is still not in the stream, but I might be wrong.
Okay, slight technical hitch there, but we have now sound and streaming, so we're good to go.
You ready to go, Paolo?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Share your screen now.
Perfect. Okay. Welcome everyone. This is the title of my talk, and it's Sharable State. But first thing first, who am I? I am Paolo Ricciuti. I'm from Italy, and I work as a full stack developer in a small town, in a small company. And unfortunately for work, I have to use React, but I'm a Svelte lover since when I've seen Rich talk about rethinking reactivity, and basically every single project of mine is done with Svelte or SvelteKit, and I love Svelte, as most of you does, I think. And you can find me on Twitter at Paolo Ricciuti or on GitHub at Paolo Ricciuti, and given the current situation, I guess also on Mastodon at Paolo Ricciuti at frontend.social. So let's dive inside the talk. My talk again is called Sharable State, and in the component-driven world that we live in, when we talk about Sharable State, the first thing that comes to mind is how to share state between components. But that's not actually what my talk is about. Because in Svelte we have a way to store to share state between components, and it's called stores. And to understand why I called my talk Sharable State, we need to go back to the beginning of the www era, and we need to understand how a URL, a uniform resource locator, work. So this is a simple URL, and I have to say this because URL can actually get quite complex. This is a video from Live Overflow that explains how complex can be URLs. So this is a simple URL, the one that we mostly use. It's a random video from YouTube, and let's go to break down how this URL is formed to understand why I called my talk Sharable State. So the first thing is the protocol. The protocol tells the client, so the browser usually, how to locate the resource, which protocol to use to locate the resource. In this case, it's HTTPS, which stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure, and I hope this is the most used on the web because it's secure, it's encrypted. There are a load of protocols. There is HTTP, which is the not secure version of HTTPS. There is FTP for File Transfer Protocol. There is File for File System. WSS for WebSocket Secure, and you can even create your own protocol. It's quite easy. And that's one part of the URL. Then there is the domain and the global top-level domain. And this couple of things are what developers usually buy as soon as they have an idea. And the reason why they buy it as soon as they have an idea is because those are unique. Once you buy a domain, you basically get the right to associate this human readable domain to an IP. And hopefully behind that IP, there is a machine connected to the web that runs a program, a server, that can serve you the content that you are searching for. So in this case, when you write youtube.com, the request gets sent to the YouTube server that serve you a page. And which page to serve, because a single server can handle multiple resources. So which page to serve? That's defined by the path. So in this case, we are asking the YouTube server to serve us the watch page. But the YouTube server handles also the index page, the channel page. By defining the path, the server knows that it has to handle the watch page. And then there are the query parameter. The query parameter tells YouTube, I want to watch this specific video, the video with this ID. And query parameters, they usually comes with, it's the part of the URL that comes after the question mark, and they usually comes with a key, an equal, and a value. And lastly, we have a hash. The hash is not sent to the server, and it's used by the client, by the browser, because if there is an element inside the page with the same ID of the hash, it will auto-scroll to that part of the page. And this is useful because if you have a very long, very texty document, you can link to a specific part of that document. So we are Svelte developers, we are front-end developers. So what do we care about? We can't really choose the protocol because we are kind of stuck with HTTPS. I mean, we can build a WebSocket server, for example, but usually we will use HTTPS. We can buy the domain plus global top-level domain, but once you buy it, it's very unusual that you actually check for the domain inside your front-end code. SvelteKit kind of blurred the line between the backend and the front-end, but it does so by bringing the backend closer to the front-end and also helps us with the path part of the URL with that sweet file-based routing. So the most interesting part for us front-end developer are actually the query params. So how do they work? This is, again, the query parameter part of the URL, which comes after the question mark. And again, a query parameter, there can be more than one query parameter. And usually they comes in the form of a key, an equal, and a value, an ampersand, a key, an equal, and a value. And you can access them with window.location.search. This will give you just the part of the query parameter inside the URL. And if you pass this string inside a new URL search params object, you will get basically a map. And just like an ordinary map, you can get a value from it. So if you do search params.get v, you will get the value associated with the key v. If you do search params.get user ID, you will get the value associated with the user ID key. And one thing to note is the fact that 1, 2, 3, 4, despite being a number, it's actually treated as a string because every query parameter is treated as a string. If you try to get something that's non-present, like non-present, you will get null. And if you try to get something that just as a key and no value, you will get an empty string. And you can also set a query parameter inside this object. And if you then later stringify it, you will get the updated query string. So now you can see why I called this talk shareable state. Not because you can share state between components, but because if you store your state inside the URL, you can actually physically share that URL, and the other person will get the same state as you. So why it's important to lift the state up to the URL? First thing first, you keep state between refreshes. And that's something that we kind of lost in the SPA world, because it was very common before. But again, in the SPA world, we kind of lost this. By lifting the state up to the URL, you can keep your state between refreshes. You get a shareable link that carries information, and that I think it's very important, because if all of your state is inside the URL and you share that URL with a friend or on Twitter, everyone that accesses that page will get the same exact page as you do. Also, it's global state without a hassle, because if different components read from the same URL, different component will get the same state. But obviously, this is not a jack of all trades. So when not to lift the state up to the URL? When the state is unique to the user, you can actually do it, and there are some situations where it's useful, but you lost most of the benefits, because if it's unique to the user, maybe he will refresh the page, he will access again the page when it's not logged in, or he will share the link with a friend, and the friend cannot see the same state. Also, if there's too much state, because unfortunately URLs have a limit of 248 characters, and if you go above that limit, it will actually not go to your website. And I had to debug this, and it was very painful. And you should not lift the state up to the URL if you can easily get that state on load. So if you are loading a blog post, for example, it's not useful and is not sensible to store the entire blog post inside the URL, where you can just store the ID, for example, and get back fetch back the post when you load the page. But I hear you say it's not reactive. Windows.location.search is not reactive, and we are used to actually when you set something inside a front-end framework, you want the UI to react. But SvelteKit developers are no joke. So we actually have a reactive version of the search params. You can just do these. You can import page from $up/store, and you will get, if you do page.url.search params, you will get a reactive version of the search params. So how to show search params inside our Svelte application? You can do this, for example, but this will not work because it works in the sense that the first time that the page loads, you will get the username, in this case, in the page, but it will not update because we are not in React. We are not rerunning our setup over and over. So this will actually not work. You can do this, but this is kind of cumbersome and it's not really good. So actually the best way to show your search param inside the markup is using reactive assignment. So you can assign this to the username, and this will actually update when your search param update. And this is how to show the value of search param. So how to set the state? You cannot do this. Despite being a reactive store, if you set the search parameter inside the store, it will not work. It will simply not update the URL. You cannot do this, or at least you can do this. This will actually work, but it has a catch, because by doing this, if you use the goto function from $up/navigation to navigate to question mark username equal recherries, you can get the new state, but you will lose the other URL state. So it's not feasible. You can actually quite do this. So the almost correct way is get the $page.url.search, pass it to a new your search params object, set the new username there, and then go to old query.toString. But we forgot the question mark. You cannot do this. If you use a reactive assignment, you cannot bind the value of that variable to an input, for example. So the proper way to do it is to use the reactive assignment to have a shorter string, and then on input, get the event, add the old query param, set the new username, and then go to old query.toString with the question mark. And also you need to add keep focus and not scroll, because otherwise you will lose focus on the input. You will scroll back to the top of the page if the input is below the fold. But even then, it's a lot of boilerplate. And every new piece of state, you have to do this. So it's kind of boring. And every value, it's a string. And it's also typed as a string. So if you use TypeScript, as you should do, it's also typed as a string. It does not have to be that way. So I'm waiting for a bit, because I'm sure everyone at home at the venue, it's drumming it's rolling their drum, because I'm here to present you SvelteKit search params, which is a library that I wrote to handle this. So what is SvelteKit search params? It's the easiest way, in my opinion, to read and write to the query params. It's fully customizable. It's really reactive. It's dev-friendly, because we have a lot of helpers. It's built with TypeScript in mind, and I'll show you what I mean by these. And it's teeny tiny. It's less than 1 kilobyte, so it will not blow your bundle size. So how to use it? First thing first, we have to install it. You can do npm install or yarn add or pm install SvelteKit search params, and that's with -d, because we are Svelte developers. We just install dev dependencies. And unfortunately, for the moment, you have to also do this. You have to update your vit.config.js to include the SSP plugin. So you can simply import SSP from SvelteKit search params /plugin. /plugin is important. And you can add this to the list of plugins. And you have to do this because Vit will try to optimize the dependencies. And by doing so, the package lose access to $up/page stores and $up/navigation. I've talked with Rich Harris on Twitter, and he said that they kind of plan to do something about it. But for the moment, obviously, the focus is on SvelteKit 1.0. So for the moment, you have to use a plugin. After that, you can simply import query param from SvelteKit search params. You can just do const username equal query param username, and you have to pass the key of the query param that you are interested in, and that's it. You have username, which is a store. You can bind the value of username to an input, and you can show the value of username. You can also pass an object that contains encode and decode functions. Encode is for when you have to get a value and put it into the URL. So you have to return a string, and you get inside as a parameter the type that you are actually using. And decode is you get a string and you can decode it to actually use it inside your code. So in this case, we want a number count. So we check for the existing, because it can be null if there's not a query parameter with count key, and we parse it. And again, this is what I meant when I say that it's written with TypeScript in mind, because count, it's a store of a number. So you don't have to define your type. It automatically gets the type from the return value of the decode function. And so that's why I can say $count ++, and it will work. But this is still a lot of boilerplate. So what I mean when I say that it's written with developers in mind is that you can actually import an object, SSP, from SvelteKit search params. And this will have a series of functions that you can call to get the proper encode and decode function. So if you just do ssp.boolean, is present, is now a Boolean store. You can bind it to the checked value of the input type checked. And just like this, you have a Boolean from the store. And this will also handle some edge cases. There are also, for example, ssp.object, and you can pass a generic that defines the shape of the object that you're trying to get from the query param, and this will give you autocomplete. So if you do $user dot, you will get name and last name, and you can also bind the value to the nested properties. So you can bind $user dot name. Obviously, you have to check if user exists, because it can always be null, but you can actually bind this to an input value. So let's see what helpers you get with the SvelteKit search parameter package. You get an object. So if you do ssp.object, you can define the shape of the object, and you get $object dot is complex, for example. So an URL like this will get you an object with is complex, with nested, and with nested.value. And you can, each of these property is reactive. You get array. So if you do ssp.array, you will get an actual array to use inside your code. Number, to have a number. Boolean, as I've said, Boolean handles edge cases, because basically you will get true if the query param is true, false if the query param is false, and also you will get false if the query param is not present. So you will not get null, you will get false. And every other value of the query param, you will still get true. So even if it's a truthy query param, you will get true. There's also a string exported from the SSP helpers, but it's mainly for readability, since all query params are already string. And that's and then there's this, which is LZ, to map any JSON serializable state, so even a number or a string or an object or an array, to his LZ string representation. LZ is a common way to store state in query params, because basically it's a base64 encoded and compressed way to store a JSON.stringify element, basically. So, for example, a state like this will get you an object with a value property, and inside value it will be my cool query param. So it's much shorter, and also it has the benefits of not being visible inside the URL, which sometimes might be cool. Obviously, this is not encrypted, so don't store valuable information inside the query param. You can also get multiple query params together. So if you import query parameters instead of query param, you can pass an object, and every key of this object it's a query param, and you will also get inside this store every other query param present. So you will not just get the query param that you pass in, and this also is typed basically based on encode and decode. So you can pass through if you just want a string, or you can pass an encode and decode object or an ssp.boolean to get the actual type. And you will get autocomplete for the things that you pass in, but you still can access every other query parameter by their key. So that's enough talking. I just want you to show how simple it is to get a simple application that does not share their state in the URL and turn it in a much cooler application, in my opinion. So I have this very simple SvelteKit application. It's a list of awesome Svelte videos, and you can order the table. You can order also by channel. You can search, and if you want, you can open a model that will tell you the title, the channel name, and you can, if you want, you can show the video or hide the video. So this is a very, very cool application, obviously, but all the state, it's inside my application. So if I refresh the page, everything is lost. So let's jump into the code. I have already installed my package because I will be crazy to install it on stream. But I now will do everything I have to do to turn this application to an application that lifts its state up to the URL. So first thing first, I'm going to vit.config.ts. I'm going to import from SvelteKit search params /plugin, and I'm getting SSP, and I'm adding SSP here as a plugin, and that's it. Then I can go to my page.svelte, and it's a very, very simple application. I have basically those 4 pieces of state. I have a search, I have a selected ID, I have a show video, which is a Boolean, and I have a sort. I have a couple of reactive assignment videos, get the data from the plus page.ts, and it filter it and sort it. And then I have selected video, which find the video from the videos based on the selected ID. So how can I turn these into an application that uses SvelteKit search params? Again, I import from SvelteKit search params, and I get query param. And let's start with the search. So I can do just query param, search, and now search, it's a store, it's a writable of string or not. So if I do search, I get the autocompletion for the strings, and now obviously I have to update everywhere I use it. So $search to lowercase. Obviously this can be null, so I have to do this, and I have to do this. And then I will go to my input, I will bind it to $search, and that's it. So if I save and I come back here, I will give a refresh just for good reasons, and it broke everything, obviously. Okay, it works. So now if I search for Ray, for example, you can see that it updated the URL. And if I refresh, it still has the search. And if I share this with a friend, I will still get the search. So first parameter down, let's go ahead and proceed with selected ID. I have to remove the typing because now I will use query param for selected ID, and now I have to import also SSP. And here, if I do SSP dot, I will get a list of all the things. So in this case, I want a number. It's a function, remember it. And now I have to update selected ID. If you see TypeScript, it's mad at me because I'm trying to compare video.id, which is a number, with selected ID, but I can do $, and it's okay. And then I have to go there and do this. So on click, I will add selected ID equal video.id. On close, I will do this, selected ID equal null. Here I have to check because I'm checking if selected ID is not null, and also the store can be null. And I think I have it all. Yes. Okay. So we updated also our selected ID. So now when I click here, a new query param is added. And again, if I share this page, the modal open automatically. And if I do ask and close the modal, it will remove the query param. Let's go ahead, show video, query param. And obviously I'm calling this show video, but you can actually say simple SV, for example, and you will use this key, ssp.boolean. Save, and now show video, it's a writable for Boolean, so I have to fix everything. Show video here and show video here, not show video. I have to fix this, and I have to fix this, but that's it. So now if I open this and I do show video, the video will appear, and if I refresh the page, it will open the modal with the video. And also, I think another cool thing to do is when I have to do some refactor of this sort, for example, the easiest way to do it is actually before changing it, you can do F2, add a $sign at the beginning. Now remove it here, and now you can use query param of sort, is a string. Sorry, is a string, and this is automatically changed everywhere. I just have to go on and add some check for null. So I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do these, but TypeScript is helping there. So once I do this, it's finished. If I save, now also the sorting is preserved. So if I do this and I show the video, we have all the state there, and if I refresh, it's still ordered by channel, it still shows the video, and it still open the model. So this was very, very simple. I would have loved to show you LZ because it's something I'm quite proud of because I think it's very cool, but it will be kind of boring. So feel free to experiment yourself. And you can find the slides for this talk on the repository and also the code for the examples. And you can also have a live slideshow at sharable-state-slides.rectify.app. And that's it. Thank you for having me, and have a good meeting, and I hope it was informative.
Awesome. Yay. Thank you, Pablo. Everyone really enjoyed that. I saw a lot.
Obviously, if you have any question, feel free to ask.
Anyone got any questions? Nope. Yes?
Perfect.
So the question was, does the library have a fixed setting for the parameter, or do you need to do that yourself each time?
Sorry,
Like if you are looking at such parameters, sometimes you go flutter power line and you can like space around selected ID or
Okay. So would you better do like a query param selected ID 0, or is there a default if it's not there? I think is the question.
no, I've actually think of a default, but I was kind of because if you then nullify the query param, you will come back to the default, or just the first time you will get the default. I think about a default while writing this talk, but I want to think more about it because I want to understand how it should behave. But one thing you can do is just add an on mount and set the default on mount, and this will work as a default.
Brilliant, thank you.
I have a question actually as well.
Yes.
Which I think we've already done. If I want to say that a Boolean value, when emitted, becomes false, becomes null. So I've got like a three-way Boolean. I've got yes, no, and not present. Can I flick a switch? Is there an option to make that a thing?
I mean, you can encode and decode. How do you, if you want to encode a Boolean to an object, you can actually do it. So inside the encode and decode function, you should write the logic for it to be okay. I want to be, if the value that I'm setting is null, I am setting the query param to auto, for example. And obviously you will have to handle this logic yourself, but it's actually something that I can add to the SSP object as an helper, because I think it's quite useful and I think it's quite common. So feel free to open an issue on the GitHub repository, and I will gladly take a look.
I may well do that. Thank you.
Brilliant. There was many nods of approval for what you were going through there, Paolo. Everyone really enjoyed it, and there's some really positive comments on the YouTube chat as well. So thank you very much. So next up, we're going to have. Thank you. No, thank you very much. We're just going to have Anthony come and take it from the stream, and then we're going to have Fergus, who's going to come and talk to us about migrating from React over to Svelte. But technical difficulties. But thank you very much for joining us, Paolo. It's great having you, and it was a really good talk. So thank you very much.
Thank you too. Bye.
Okay. Right, Fergus. Take your camera mode on. Turn off the video, right? Oh Lord, is he holding it out?
It's on top of here. I think I can just probably keep it there.
Right, stop camera. Right. Share screen. What screen do you want to share, Fergus?
The one that's up here.
Share screen. Oh god, share screen. This one?
No, the second one.
This one.
Yeah. I think I should then be able to put the slides on the laptop and then it'll appear on there. Okay, let's give it a whirl.
So that's this one.
You may have some interval drink. I think so.
Oh, Inception. Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay, and then if I try and put on. Hopefully we have. Yeah, perfect.
Awesome.
Okay, awesome. Do we have a clicker or? Actually, yeah, there's one here.
You got it?
Yeah, is it gonna work? Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Hi to everyone online. Oh, this is a crotch cam now.
It's not down, is it?
Is it not on? Oh, perfect. Okay. No, it's all right. I can be just the voice, the godly voice. Hi, so I'm Fergus. Nice to meet you all. Love to see some faces here today. I'm a developer here at Outverse. We're just downstairs in a cozy little office here. I hope you like the decor and the plants. It's very kind of green and cool. Lots of glass, so watch out if you walk into something. It's very easy to get lost as well. So we are a community platform, and most of our code up until now has been built in React. And I've been really hot on Svelte, even in my previous job. Is it on? Working? Yep. And dying to switch us over. So this is a work in progress talk about moving from Svelte to React, or moving from React to Svelte. It's the wrong way around. No, moving from Svelte to React. There we go. Got my prepositions the wrong way around. So yeah, we're going to Svelte from React progressively. So it's a nod to the progressive enhancement that SvelteKit has going on. And so it's a bit of a work in progress talk because we're currently moving to Svelte. We haven't yet finished. We're currently in a sprint doing it, and we've done some preparatory work. So this is a talk about how we're approaching it and hopefully successfully going to achieve it in a couple of weeks. So why is this talk interesting, first of all? So yet another migration talk. There has been a bunch of different meetups and also in the conferences, but now is a great time because SvelteKit has just reached RC1. So for businesses, that means it's a stable platform-ish that we can hopefully move towards and kind of use without having to worry about underneath the APIs changing too much. And also the Svelte ecosystem has matured quite significantly in the last couple of years since SvelteKit's come out, since Svelte 3. So we're in a place where there's a lot more documentation, library, support, and communities as well, which is a great place to be for a language to take on, a language and a framework to take on the likes of React, Next, and Vue. But for many existing companies, and I know many people here, it's like, well, we love Svelte, but everyone's in React and we're 6 foot deep in it. How the hell do we get out? How do we convince managers and people with the chops to make business decisions to get out for the better? So a bit of background first. We're Outverse, so we're a community-based platform where we're building forums, video spaces, and custom content for communities to build out. And we've recently launched. So we were founded in 2021. We've been building for about 12 months in React, and we're a team of 4 engineers and a designer and some founders, and we're currently launched to beta users, and we had a recent launch in the summer on Product Hunt that went very well. So we're a real product, we've got real users, so our goal is to not disturb them as best as possible as we transition over to SvelteKit. And the best case scenario for the business is nobody notices, fingers crossed. So it's a pretty boring app as it currently stands. It's React with TypeScript, highly recommend if you're not already using it, React Router, Redux, and then the back end is a Django with a Django REST API with some cool TypeScript auto generation. So we get some types for our serializers and our API endpoints. So it makes the whole interaction a lot nicer. So why SvelteKit out there? So SvelteKit is relatively new. Obviously, it came from a different platform before, and then obviously Svelte itself has existed for far longer. It's a really cool language. Developer experience is fantastic. Anyone who's used it generally has good things to say about it. So I don't need to preach to the choir here because we're all Svelters. And then of course, Kit just brings a whole bunch of other stuff along with it. So SSR, we really want to get into public pages and being able to do SEO content. So for us, it's vital to be able to do SSR. And so it was more of a consideration of, okay, which platform do we move to? And there's a cost no matter which one you move to, whether it's Next, or doing a complete transition to SvelteKit or to something like Vue. So regardless of the platform, there is a cost. So SvelteKit was high up on the list of viable candidates. Plus, I've had previous experience using Svelte and the pre-RC1 version of SvelteKit. So I knew what was involved. I knew how cool it was and how fun it was to use. So I was dying to get a chance to do it. So when RC1 came along, I was like, yes, finally. So how can we do this? So when we sat down and said, okay, well, realistically, how can we move to SvelteKit, or how can we move to another framework? So the first option is obviously don't move to Next. It's the most similar to React. It has most of the same stuff, except you get the SEO or the SSR benefits and a few other bells and whistles. Not an option because, well, we're in React 17. One of the front-end engineers decided actually React 18 doesn't look that fun to transition to. It's going to be a whole load of work. And there's this new kid on the block. Let's try that. So obviously that's not an option. Complete rewrite. We can't stop the world. We're a small young startup with 7 people. We're trying to grow. We're trying to build product out in the open, and we want to continue to be able to ship product regardless of what we're doing with the back end, with the front end as well. So complete rewrite, stopping the world for 3 months, wouldn't really be an option. There have been some examples of talks where I think Level Up Tuts demonstrated how they moved over in 3 months. But for us, stopping the world simply wasn't an option. We're trying to ship product on a kind of sprint by sprint, fortnightly basis to try and keep and aim towards a product market fit. So there's some kind of ball rolling there. Other frameworks that exist out there, so Astro does what they call an islands approach. So they enable you to use any framework or language of your choice in the front end and basically drop in little pockets of JS interactivity wherever you like, and they provide some bindings and things to help facilitate cross communication as well. So that was an option, but of course the big thing missing is SvelteKit, or Kit in this case. So we still really wanted to use the best possible platform for Svelte, where there's also a huge amount of development going, and it's quite an exciting and early place to be at. And lastly, wrap React in Svelte on top of Kit. So early doors, even Rich Harris provided a couple of gifts on GitHub, showing you how you could use Svelte in React and React in Svelte. It was a bit of a hacky way of doing it. It wasn't the most usable way, but it was just a proof of concept. Since then, other people have had ideas. How do we do this? What's the best way? And lo and behold, there is someone who's actually done it recently and made it really easy. So Bob Banger, out there, awesome guy, has built a node package called Svelte Preprocess React, and that enables you to do exactly what it says on the tin, seamlessly use React components inside a Svelte app. It supports nesting, so you can use slots and children natively. You can use context, so you can pass context through the Svelte to the React back out again, and obviously provides SSR and hooks as well. Here's a QR code if you want to jump to his GitHub. It will be in several other slides as well, so don't worry, you won't miss it. But this is about 3 months old and kind of did exactly what we needed at the right time. So it's kind of just in time as well with RC1. So I think this is probably the most viable way for an existing React project of a decent scale. So for context sake, we have about 250 TypeScript TSX components. So it's not a small code base, it's not a huge code base, but there is a lot of work involved to try and do it. So trying to do a stop the world approach just wouldn't be feasible. This, on the other hand, makes it easy-ish. So our approach, how are we going to do it? So we decided on a top-down, then bottom-up approach. So what does it mean by top-down? So we start with the pages at the top, and we say, okay, can we wrap all our page-level components in a Svelte wrapper and simply just serve them on Kit? So what does that involve? That means taking your hopefully componentized pages that have either a very small or simple interface, wrapping them in Svelte,
and then removing all the existing React router references and replacing them with standard anchor tags. Easy enough. To help with that, the React Svelte preprocess React, if I get the right way around, has a Sveltify function, so it can Sveltify a React component, but also has a preprocessor plugin that lets you just label a component as React, and the preprocessor will insert the shim where necessary. So it looks like this. So once you've installed it and set it up in any package manager of your choice, all you have to do is insert React, import your component as normal, and then pass in any parameters you want, and voila. You have a React component inside a Svelte component on top of Kit. It looks like you're using a Svelte component, which is great because it's a simple thing. And hopefully then when you come along and replace this custom space page with an actual Svelte component, you just remove the label, job done, easy transition. In the meantime, this means that product can continue changing stuff within the custom space page without myself or whoever's doing the transition having to worry about what's going on. So in theory, doing the top-down first means that we can maintain product velocity and continue to ship features or continue to actually do the transition at some basic level. And then the step 2 is convert atomic components. So coming from a bottom-up approach, you could start from the page level and go all the way down, but you'd have hell going through, oh, like I've got 15 imports, how do I go through them? And each one's got 3 or 4. So we then decided to go, okay, well, we've got a team that wants to learn how to use Svelte first, so not all of us are Svelte experts. How do we transition our team as well? And that means learning from the bottom up. So we've got a bunch of atomic components that are such as avatars, buttons, all the kind of boring stuff that we reuse everywhere. Those are the smallest, simplest components that generally don't have too much state going on with them and are quite easy to convert. So we have about 20 atomic components, and the plan was then to use, again, another function in this library that is called Reactify, which lets you then convert a Svelte component to the Svelte version, and then use a small function called Reactify, and it converts and gives you back a React object that you can then use as if it was a React component. The cheeky way to use it is to have an index.ts in your part of your components library, and then wire it through so that every React component that uses one of your atomic components just references that. So all it comes down to is 2 lines of code, and you have now got your Svelte avatar in all your React components. So for all those components in between the top level page and the bottom level avatar, you now have everything else still referencing the same thing. As long as you haven't changed the API, it should be good. So work so far, what have we done? So time-wise, to give you a perspective of how long it's taken, we spent 2 weeks turning a 2-day proof of concept. So as soon as the RC1 came out, I was like, oh God, I need to try this out. Can I do it? Found this package, did the research, and then spent 2 days hacking together a basic layout and a basic routing. It was a bit janky, not everything worked, but I proved that we could have a working version that was like for like, and used all the existing React Redux and stuff inside the React components inside the Svelte wrapper. So we had a viable opportunity, and it took about 2 weeks of turning that into a root complete app. So we then mapped out each route and converted each page, and more or less it went fairly swimmingly. Now we're spending 2 weeks training and porting components. So we're training the rest of our team, and as part of it, porting about 20 React Atom components and seeing how far we can get up the stack. So we're going to start at the atoms and then work up to the next composite components and so on and so forth and see how far we get. Yeah, and then follow-up, so ongoing, we'll then start to port page components and introduce SSR. So the goal here is obviously to get SSR. We don't have it yet because we have a bunch of packages, a bunch of things, and we're not using load functions at the moment for the pages. So we can't get the benefits of the SSR. So that's ongoing, and hopefully by Christmas, I'm hoping, like if this next couple of weeks goes well, we can then start doing some of the simpler pages and see how that goes and testing out. So all of that sounds kind of easy. Yes and no. It was easier than I thought it was going to be. The fact that we did the 2-day proof of concept was great because it meant that we're in a place where actually it is possible to hack it together, demonstrate something to whoever is in charge of transferring something like React to Svelte. But what were some of the things to watch out for? So we love TypeScript, but with the transition, it meant we had to change a few things. So type-only imports. If you're using an import as only a type and not a value. You've got to make sure you do that everywhere in Svelte world. If you don't, you'll get errors in the compiler. It's not fun. And they can be everywhere. Early on, we tried doing this, and this was probably the only thing that really moved in terms of trying to do product work and dev work at the same time. So when new components got added within pages, they would often have types, but they wouldn't have the correct import stuff. So we had to get a meeting on and say, okay, or just put a post and say, look, every new thing that uses a type, make sure you import it. It makes my life easier. Hopefully, it'll make it move a bit more smoothly. Clashing types between React and Svelte for DOM elements. I think that's probably a setup issue we have at the moment, but not a big deal. The rest of the environment works perfectly. We've got linting in both. We have prettifying in both. So the actual environment is great to work in. You can only have one router to rule them all. So you either go with React Router or Svelte Kit. Make sure you change everything from navigate. And there's many different instances of not using a button or using a link instead of a button, or button instead of a link. You've got to make sure you find all those go-tos and navigates and such and transfer them over. Small interface changes. So the benefit here is that in React, obviously, you have to use, I don't know what the correct term for them is, but I call them slot props. So normally you have children, you only have one child. And then in Svelte, you can have name slots and default slots, which means you can put stuff, say, for example, in a header, footer, and body. In React, you'd have to pass those components through as slot props. In this version of events, you can't do that. So you've got to then change the API slightly, which obviously means there's a bit more work. But by this point, hopefully, you've changed over the wrappers for the pages, so you can now freeze the world a little bit, get through the gnarly bits, and then move quickly on to the next bit. We've still got to do Redux and stores, so they kind of make a lot of sense and map straight over. So there's not too much eventful stuff there to talk about. Use fetch hooks to load functions. Again, quite simple, straightforward. Actually, a simpler model as well, because there's none of this rerunning all the time. And lastly, we had the dev server hanging issue, which to me was like this for 2 weeks almost. So the dev server is great, but for some reason we found out that it was just hanging when reloading certain pages. Couldn't figure out why for ages. And then yesterday, the Svelte Kit runtime added logging and told you what it was doing on the server, and it said the SSR was compiling. And I was like, oh God, there's SSR somewhere in the app. So we just turned it off at the root level layout, and it was all good. Though do remember to use the plus for pages and layouts, because that caught me for about half an hour. And I was like, why isn't this working? And so then I disabled both server-side rendering and client-side rendering, and it still rendered. I was like, what's going on? And then I just looked in the file browser, and I was like, oh God, been doing this for how long? But other than that, it's great, because now we have a fully working app, and we're starting to transition our team. We're a week in, so we now have, I think, about 10 of the 20 components transferred over, and it's working great. So we have a working app using the Kit router. It's glorious, anchor tags, simplicity. We can do prefetching already at the top level. So magic, basically. Doesn't yet SSR, but at least it fetches stuff a little sooner. Atom components have shrunk by up to 50%, grand claim. Some of them have shrunk by up to 50%. With TypeScript and defaults, you tend to have a lot of verbosity, and the default thing, I think, is the biggest thing that just compressed it down, which is really nice in Svelte. So win-win. And as Rich Harris said in one of his opening blog posts for the Svelte stuff, it's like less code, it's better. It's not too dense, but it's a much better developer experience. It's much easier to read, as I said, the next point, intuitive. We have default slots and reactivity, and what I think is a much more intuitive way of working, much closer to the real, or the basic JavaScript that you would normally use beforehand. So when you're onboarding new devs, it should make the entire experience a lot easier and a lot more pleasant for both of you when you're not realizing, oh God, I forgot to use useState. Fast builds, easy, and lots more to do next. So we've still got to do the rest of the Redux. We have a lot of Redux. Load functions in order to pave the way for SSR and all that SEO goodness. Thank you for listening. It's a work in progress. I'll be back sometime in the future, and hopefully with a successful, we've done it, at least 90% of the way. So any questions, feel free to reach out, and I can take some now as well. But yes, that is it. We're Outverse, and we're hiring. So if you're on the market for a Svelte job, it's a work in progress, but we're getting there. There we go.
Yeah, thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Fergus. So one question I wanted when I saw you going through the slides there was, the routing for one.
Yes.
How did that go?
So it was fun. We've mostly transitioned all the routing. There's a few little bugs I need to fix in terms of there's some history state stuff we still need to fix. But beyond that, it was a very like navigate just turned into anchors and the functions just turned into go-to. So it was.
It's so much nicer, isn't it? Just go into an anchor tag to navigate now.
Also, Bob has just in the last couple of days pushed some commits to actually put in some shims for the React router as well. So if you're in this world where you are trying to do parallel work as well as do the transition, you can put in these shims for the time being until you've got time to then transition everyone over. So it's like an indirect way of doing it.
I'm not sure if anyone else has got a question, but I wanted to ask about Redux and how you're going to manage that.
Ongoing.
Okay.
Ongoing, but so far we've moved over a couple of the small stores, so like the user store and what we have as a community, and it's been quite nice.
All right, brilliant. I think Nilesh has got a question. Hang on a sec.
So, what was the reduction in the code size like?
You'll have to tune in for the next talk for that. We've only done about 35 components, maybe 40 components, including the pages and the atoms. But I can say like a rough random stat, like some of the components have at least changed by, I don't know, 10, 20%. Some of the biggest ones were 50% smaller. So it's definitely nicer. But I think the biggest savings hopefully will come in the page level components when we're just pulling things in, and it should be much nicer.
So I sort of have two questions right now. Firstly, has this hit production yet? And if yes, what issues are you guys facing with that?
Not yet. We're also going fully in with Vercel as well. So we've putting that on, and I think we've got as of this morning, we've got a dev build going on there. It's having a few issues, but beyond that, yeah, nothing to report.
And secondly, how has the developer sentiment been around like working with Svelte so far?
I can bring in Filippo for that. How's the developer sentiment, Filippo? Good, thumbs up. We've got a thumbs up.
Thumbs up, okay.
Yeah, I'm going to speak on behalf of him and say that all the good things about Svelte are true. It's simpler, it's easy. It was very quick to onboard. It was very easy to explain the reasons why it was a good idea as well. So I think actually getting developer buy-in kind of should be straightforward, unless you've got React or Vue diehards that just don't want to give it up, in which case like that's a different problem.
Cheers, thank you.
No worries.
We have one from YouTube, which is how are bindings and events handled?
How are bindings and events handled? It's a good question. We haven't done any bindings yet. I think the best thing to do is check the library. I think they are handled. I could be wrong.
So
events are handled. So events get properly propagated, and I think they're also typed. So you do get all of that magic as well. I'm not 100% sure about bindings.
So the library handles all of the preprocessor handles a bunch of this stuff for you.
So the preprocessor handles inserting the shim, and then the library just does the wrapping of the component with propagating events.
Okay. Hopefully that's good. A good answer.
I can assure also that the actual library is very easy to understand, so it's easy to dive in and have a look and see. And I'm sure Bob would appreciate some.
Okay. Hopefully that's a good answer for you now. So he's actually, they have actually produced 2 lines of emojis. I can't read those out, but also do remember to log things. Do you know what that means?
Also remember to log things.
Yeah, I'm just reading that verbatim because I'm not sure.
Oh, well, presumably it meant to do with the SSR logging. Yeah, we tried that, but it was happening in the server, and it was really hard to actually pick up anything. It was just hanging indefinitely.
Right.
So if you ever get an indefinitely hanging Vite server for SvelteKit, it's probably SSR related. So turn it off at the root and then work backwards.
Cool.
If you're moving from React, otherwise use it immediately because it's great. So.
Okay. Any more questions? One here.
So we had a great talk back in I believe it was August from Chris Ellis.
Yes.
He moved his whole company over to Svelte from React, and he said developer onboarding was a lot simpler just because of the conciseness of the code. So just wanted to ask what the experience was with Outverse.
So far, it's been good. Filippo's given me no trouble. It's been a very, I just kind of, I think with the state of documentation and the state of the Svelte tutorials. I think the only thing lacking at the moment is when you get into the depths of SvelteKit itself. There's not yet enough documentation to really kind of onboard a complete newbie. But going into Svelte is great.
There's always a Discord.
Yeah, it's always.
So we've got another question. Sorry, what's your name?
How do you handle, or how did you handle stylings before when you were on React and or still are to some extent, and how are you migrating that to Svelte?
So actually, we already use Tailwind CSS significantly, and that means I think most of our styling is kept at the React component level rather than using scoped CSS or using CSS modules. We do have a few of those, but those are like pernickety styles when design just wants to give us really kind of sexy components that we can't quite achieve in Tailwind. So in terms of transitioning over, it should just be a zero code change, and those components that do change just move into being scoped, and it means one less package to import as well.
These are maybe not this. Okay, so when you have conditional stylings, have you thought about that? How do you handle it, or do you use reactive statements for each of, or
So for conditional styling, so whether or not to say make a button rounded or
yeah, exactly.
At the moment we just conditionally add in the class name.
Okay, so
okay. So yeah, I think with SvelteKit or Svelte it's even easier because you can just make it a property, and then using the shorthand it just adds it or removes it.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're okay being on the stream?
Yeah, sure. That was my last question, by the way. Thank you.
Perfect.
Got to apologise for the shaky Svelte Witch project, Cam. Yeah, and we do apologise for the butt cam earlier on in the stream. But I think that is about it for the stream today. Thank you everyone for tuning in and watching, and thank you everyone for this great turnout, and thanks again to Vercel for hosting. So that's it everyone, thanks a lot, cheers.